Hello and welcome to the Will Leitch Show. I am the aforementioned Will Leitch. I thank you for spending part of your day with me. Today's show is about sports movies. Okay, so I have a confession to make, and it's one I'm a little nervous about making because, in addition to this show, I am also the host of SI's at the Movies, a show about sports movies. So here goes. I don't like sports movies. This is strange because sports and movies are like my two favorite things. But like chocolate and sushi, alcohol and family members, politics and literally anything else, these are not two great tastes that taste great together. I think most sports movies are lame. Major League is basically a film sitcom. The Natural is sentimental hokum. And Hoosiers is basically a white Midwesterner's fantasy of what they wish the world was actually like. The thing that I like about sports and movies, the thing that they have in common, is that they are unpredictable. You never know when you sit down to watch what's going to happen. But for some reason, sports movies insist on being predictable, adhering to the formula. Meet the team. Beleaguered but inspirational coach tries to work the hotshot star and ragtag supporting cast into shape. There is conflict. The team comes together. But then they figure it out just in time for the big tournament. And then at last, the triumphant big game. Now, why would you distill the thrill of sports down into something safe and cliched? Why do we want this same rags to riches story every time? Even Moneyball, which is a story about math, ends with the big game, even though the whole point of Moneyball is that one game doesn't even matter. It's also worth noting that this is getting worse. The best sports movies, the truly daring and interesting ones, they all came out decades ago. Bull Durham, Slapshot, Raging Bull, Caddyshack. These were a good movie first, and then they became a sports movie. A good sports movie has to work on its own as a movie, independent of the sports aspect. But I feel most sports movies are just trying so hard to be a sports movie that they end up getting the sports part wrong and the movies part wrong. All right, now I know I'm a little bit of a grump about this, but I really don't care if Daniel LaRusso won his big fight, let alone what the hell he's doing now, 30 years later, YouTube Red. And I really don't care if the Titans won or why I'm supposed to remember them. And I really don't care whether Keanu Reeves got his teammates to respect him, even though he's a goddamn scab. If I want to watch a game, I'll watch a game. If I want to watch a movie, I'll watch a movie. But if you're expecting me to get excited just because Rudy got in a freaking game, you know, in real life, all those players thought Rudy was lame and a joke. Spoiler alert. Anyway, make sure to watch SI's at the Movies with me and Charlotte Wilder all this month, discussing all the great sports movies here on SI TV. Joining me now is a senior writer and movie critic at Entertainment Weekly, author of the new book Caddyshack, the making of a Hollywood Cinderella story, and an alumnus of the Connecticut College Camels. Please welcome Chris Nashawaty. Sir, thank you for coming.
Good to
please,
see
please,
you.
come have a seat at our fake couch, at our fake table. Welcome to the Meredith family.
It is a pleasure to be a part of it.
Yes. So one of the things I want to talk to you about, because the book, I've read the book. I was very honored. When you're a fancy pants media person like we are, you get to see it before the rest of the public. You get to see all of the horrible racial slurs you had in the book.
Right, which fortunately you alerted me to, and I took them out. Yeah.
I feel like someone would have said something. But regardless, I was glad to be able to help out in that way. But one of the things we've kind of talked about with Caddyshack, before we get into too much about the book, is the general idea of sports movies. And my theory is I love sports. I obviously write about sports professionally. I also, like you, though less well and less often, write about movies. And I don't like mixing the two very much. It seems weird to me that something that's so unpredictable and so wonderful like sports, the whole point of sports is who knows what's going to happen.
Right.
For sports movies always have this very strict formula that they absolutely even Moneyball, for crying out loud, has this kind of formula. So I'm curious, as someone that obviously Caddyshack I think falls outside of this a little bit. But why do you think this? Why do you think that we have this kind of sports movie? People tend to like it. Like I look at The Ringer and the whole thing's about all these great sports movies that are very predictable. Why do you think sports movies have this like template they're supposed to have?
Well, I mean, I think, most people want to see a movie where the underdogs triumph in the end, which is like 80% of sports movies. And, they don't always follow the template. I mean, Rocky famously doesn't win, the big fight in the first one. Sorry about that. A little late, but spoiler. And they did revert to the template.
Of course, very quickly.
And very quickly.
To the point that now you have to remind people that he loses in the first one.
Right. And I think a movie like Tin Cup, which I also really enjoy, that's like a movie about failing gloriously. But you're right.
But it still ends in the big game.
Yes.
That said, it still ends in the big game, and it gets credit for subverting the idea.
Yeah.
But it still kind of fits the template in every other way, other than the fact that he loses.
Even a really subversive sports movie like the original Bad News Bears has them
has
sort of triumphing.
In the Astrodome, right. That's the
I don't know. I think people want to just sort of have their expectations met when they go to the movies a lot of times. And that's unfortunately what sports movies deliver. But I do think the best ones sort of avoid that template.
I wonder if it's part, because obviously you know sports very well as well, and I wonder if part of it is what we want out of our sports. Like, we talk about people want underdog stories in movies. They totally want them in sports. Like, the whole thing with sports is we love the underdog. We loved LeBron James when he first came up, but then he became a champion. Everyone goes from the Karate Kid to eventually becoming Cobra Kai. I guess. I think The Dark Knight's about this exact thing, only with a little more IMAXed. To me, I wonder if it's part of the way we are about sports. If it's less about movies and more the idea that like basically every sports movie seems to me kind of like a sepia-toned, soft-focus Olympics feature.
Yep.
Where it's like, here's
Up close
someone
and
that,
personal.
that sort of thing. Like, I wonder if part of it's too. It's less about the movies themselves and more about the sports.
Yeah, I think that's true. Again, I think it just goes back to why people go to the movies in the first place. You know, even if it's not a sports movie, if it's a rom-com, you want to see the two people who are having such a hard time getting together get together. There's something neatly wrapped up and tied with a bow after 2 hours that you can walk out feeling like you got what you wanted out of that. Sports, you know, if you're a Cubs fan, you know, good luck getting what you want, you know, out of, or well, maybe less so these days, but
that didn't happen. That did not happen. 2016 was not a real thing that happened.
I just think that movies give us what we want and sports give us what we need in a way.
I'm curious if, and this kind of brings us back to Caddyshack, one of the things I love about, one of the many things I love about your book is it kind of gets together how kind of unlikely it was that this movie would get made in the first place, and also kind of how the decade that it was made, and like the timing that it was made, and how everything seemed a little freer and seemed a little so on compared to the way the movies are made now. Like, you talk about movies made all the way. Now, do you think a movie like Caddyshack, never minding like just the structure of it, of whoever the equal actor would be to Bill Murray or Chevy Chase, but just like the way studios are set up and the way movies are financed, do you think a movie like that could even just be financed the way that now as it was then?
I think you could have a slobs versus snobs sports comedy in the mold of Caddyshack, but you wouldn't be able to have Caddyshack, especially the way that it was made. I mean, you know, there was no studio supervision. They went down to Florida with, you know, basically a blank check, did a ton of drugs, your first-time director. I mean, every strike that you can have against a movie, this movie had against it. And
so was it just different in the 70s? Like, what was it?
I think it was, and I think that also there was a really important sort of variable in there. And that's that Harold Ramis, the director, and Doug Kenny, the producer, who also both worked on the script, they were just coming off Animal House.
So they were hot.
They were more than hot. That was the highest grossing comedy of all time when that came out. And it came out of nowhere. So, you know, this was their next movie. So they were given a tremendous amount of latitude and just, you know, a long leash to just do whatever they wanted because everyone thought that they knew something.
They tapped into the comedy button. They could hit the comedy button.
They had discovered a totally new audience. And so they were given a lot of leeway, and they took advantage of it, and then some.
One thing that I find interesting about sports movies too, they don't, even the ones that become like cult, like classics, don't tend to be really successful their first time through. Like I think you see this with comedies in general. This happens a lot with, but I think with sports movies too. Like a lot of I remember when I was in high school when The Sandlot came out, and it was like kind of a minor movie. It was fine. It was perfectly likable, and I think it got perfectly respectable 3 stars, B reviews, and then it just kind of moved on. And no one really thought about it, and now it's
like this touchstone for a
whole
generation.
Yeah, like
no one's more surprised about that than I am. I don't understand. I can't fathom how that happened.
I wonder if how much, because Tim Grierson and I, who I do movie reviews with, we rank Steven Spielberg movies for Vulture, and we had Hook quite justifiably at the very bottom.
Yeah.
And the number of people that were raised with Hook were like, "What are you talking about? This movie's my childhood." So I wonder if that's part of it too. It's just like that was the only movie. Like Rookie of the Year isn't that great either, but I'll always have kind of a soft spot in my heart because I saw that when I was young.
Sure. I mean, it's funny. I mean, I work, at Entertainment Weekly, and there's. I'm sort of on the older end of the spectrum there. There's a lot of people in their 20s who are, to them, and you mention some of the John Hughes movies or movies like Animal House or Caddyshack, and it's just sort of like this blank expression.
Right.
But when they talk about Clueless or 10 Things I Hate About You or whatever, like that to them.
They're all into Boy Meets World. That's another thing that I missed.
Boy Meets World, like that whole sort of block of programming. I'm too old for it. It doesn't resonate for me at all. Sandlot's the same way. Like I don't get the fan base and like the huge groundswell for this movie, but I respect it because it's obviously coming from a place where it hit these people at the right time.
But did Caddyshack, it was a success when it came out, but it wasn't Animal House. Like it didn't take over the world the way that Animal House
the
did.
movie was, it did okay. The budget was $6 million. They made about 40 on it, which is totally respectable.
Totally. But not the explosion of Animal House.
Not the explosion of Animal House, and the reviews were like savage. They were really, like almost personally nasty. Everyone thought that Bill Murray's character was like just idiotic and pointless and dumb, and the only person who got good reviews out of the movie was Rodney Dangerfield, actually. But the reviews were scathing, and it was regarded as such a failure, actually, that. It really only took off later on VHS, which is what happens with a lot of comedies you're talking about, like Austin Powers or The Big Lebowski. I mean, these are movies that...
I was thinking of like Wet Hot American Summer.
Totally.
Like that was like
Example.
yawned upon when people saw it.
Yeah.
And then like 10 years later, like, oh wow, Bradley Cooper was in that.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
it became like a weird kind of touchstone.
Absolutely.
To where now it's like a franchise of its own.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's I wonder if that's another thing that comedies and sports movies have, because I feel like this happens about sports movies too. Like Rudy, as a good example, was not like a smashing box office hit.
Right.
But now I feel like it's everywhere and you can't get away from that movie.
Absolutely.
And I wonder if that's part of it too. Do you have a personal favorite? Is it Caddyshack? Is Caddyshack your favorite sports movie?
I don't even. It's hard to even describe it.
How many
as a
times have you
sports movie.
seen Caddyshack at this point?
I mean, plus or minus 100 probably.
Fair enough.
But
That doesn't seem crazy to me. I feel like I've seen
No, that
Caddyshack
seems totally
roughly
normal.
in the same time. And I didn't write a book about it.
That one I've seen more than any other. I mean, is it the best sports movie? No, but it's my favorite sports movie. I love Raging Bull. I think that is obviously amazing. I think the original Rocky is like a movie that unfortunately diminishes the more you look at the sequels, but the original is
The Matrix
really
problem.
great, is a really great movie. I actually have a real weird soft spot for Tin Cup.
Oh yeah, Tin Cup was fun.
I think that's a really great movie.
I like Cheech Marin as a support. He's like very underappreciated.
He's fantastic in that movie. Yeah, it's a really good movie, and of course, like Bull Durham is great.
Bull Durham is probably my favorite one. Because I think it's like great about baseball, in addition to all the other stuff that it's great about, which is kind of my marker for a good sports movie.
And I think the fact that it was actually written by someone who had spent time in the minors, gives it that sort of authenticity.
So I'm curious. I'm going to talk. I have a few questions here in a bit. We're going to touch on Caddyshack, but I'm curious. You've been through this whole process and talking about it so many times. I'm curious. Do you still love the movie? Have you sat down since you've been on tour and since you've written the book, been on tour? Have you actually sat down and be like, okay, I'm now just going to watch this movie like a normal person? And I feel like I'd be terrible. You turn down and be like, oh my God, it sucks.
Well, look, I mean, even from the get-go, I recognize that although I think it's a hilarious movie and still do, even after watching it so many times and writing about it, I recognize it as a completely flawed movie and not a particularly well-made movie. I think what makes, and I say this in the book, I think what makes the movie perfect is its imperfections. You know what I mean? It is a mess. It's held together with like chewing gum and Scotch tape. It's like really, it's just it's a mess. But it's a great mess. So I don't think it holds up to any sort of critical standard, but I do think it's a really it works on a gut level.
I mean, this is a constant thing with comedies, of course. Like Anchorman, to me, is like the ultimate example. Like Anchorman, I think it's hard to argue is not one of, like at this point, is not into the canon of one of the top comedies of all time. And at the time, everyone just kind of like, it's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not a live movie. But and it's funny with a movie like Wayne's World, when that came out, everyone like that got great reviews, and they were so happy with it. And it was a huge, huge hit. And I don't feel like anybody watches Wayne's World.
Let me ask you a question about Wayne's World. Are you a Wayne's World 2 guy or a Wayne's World 1 guy?
I'm probably a Wayne's World 1 guy, but I understand. I like the meta quality of both of them.
Okay.
I like the meta quality. I like the, generally speaking, Wayne's World 2 has a little bit of that Gremlins too, where they're like, hey, look what we can get away with in this one. There's like Tony Randall be smart, fancy gremlin or something. I think he shows up in both movies. Okay, so now, I now want to get to our next section. This is a section we call frivolous questions of dubious import.
Intriguing.
These can have short answers or long answers, however you feel inclined to do so. Question number 1. You achieved one of my sacred honors that, speaking of people, young people will not know or care about at all. You were satirized once in Mad Magazine.
Ah, yes, that's true.
Can you glaze over the eyes of every young person that works on this show by telling that story?
Yeah, I mean, Mad Magazine has a history of satirizing magazines. And they decided to put Entertainment Weekly into its crosshairs, and they did a fake Entertainment Weekly. And
did you have like a funny name? Didn't they give you like funny names?
They did. I was going to say that once I didn't know that I would be involved in it in any way. They came by the office to introduce themselves and then went off on their merry way to write their jokes.
Oh, so they like came in and researched.
They did, yeah, for like a day.
Yeah, they cased the joint.
Yeah, they did, and they saw what they needed, and then when I opened it, finally got it, I looked on the masthead, and there it was, Chris Wishy-Washy.
Chris Wishy-Washy.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm okay with that.
I can die.
I would love that. They've never done that at New York Magazine or Sports. They probably did Sports Illustrated, but
there's still time.
Not anymore. When the SITV Mad Magazine issue comes out. Okay, have you ever met a film critic that wasn't a huge nerd? You ever met a cool film critic? Who's the coolest film critic you've ever met?
I mean, I honestly, no. I mean, we're all, look, I mean, the gig is to spend hours and hours and hours inside in the dark. And just then go home in your underwear and write about them.
Right.
I mean, like, it's surprising that more of us don't have like mushrooms growing on the backs of our necks.
I feel like I've been behind it.
I have never met him, but I have seen photos of Anthony Lane from The New Yorker, and he's always in like a rumpled linen suit, looking very dashing, like he just walked out of a Graham Greene novel.
Yes.
So him, I guess.
I think, was there a Simpsons joke about that? It turns out that Leonard Maltin is actually the sexiest person. I think Mark Simpson pointed that out. What sport do you think produces the worst movies?
Ooh. Just based on the small sample size, I would have to say bobsledding.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
So someone's not a Cool Runnings.
No, I'm not.
Again, like Hook, that's one of those movies that a lot of people just love. I don't know why you were happy that John Candy died. I liked John Candy.
I said nothing like that.
Who's the worst actor you've ever seen pretend to be an athlete, where you watch the actor and you see that, like, wow, they are really, really bad at that?
Well, Rodney's golf swing in Caddyshack was
really terrible.
an abomination. But I don't think he was supposed to be very good. I would say De Niro in Bang the Drum Slowly.
Oh yeah, that was
He looks so unnatural. I mean, for such a method guy too, you would think he would spend like a year with in the minor leagues preparing for this role. It's very early in his career, but like he plays a catcher. He can barely like throw the ball back to the mound. I would say him for sure.
I remember Anthony Perkins played Jimmy
Strikes
Pearsall
Out,
in Fear Strikes Out. And Anthony Perkins is apparently right-handed, and Jimmy Pearsall was left-handed. But rather than just, switch the frame like you could, they didn't. He just throws with his left hand the entire time. And not even like Major League Baseball players can throw with their left hand if they're right-handed. Okay, this is a question we actually ask everyone on every show. Have you ever had pink eye like Bob Costas, have been out in public and had pink eye at the Olympics? Because he was really a gamer about it.
He was a gamer. He's playing through the pain.
Yeah, every day. He wanted to be on television so badly.
Yeah, well, who could blame him? That's a good marquee venue there. I enjoyed watching him have pink eye every day and was hoping secretly that that it would never get cured because it was.
I don't think it did.
You would just tune in every day, like, is it getting worse?
Yeah, they said that was the idea, right? It was like a subplot. It's like, okay, and then finally, like, okay, like you're terrifying the international contingent. Okay, do you think golf is a waste of land? Do you like golf? I feel like golf's a waste. George Carlin has a riff about golf being a waste of land.
Yeah, I mean, look, I like golf. I'm not a huge golfer.
Right.
It does seem like a lot of space that could be
used for like a million better things.
Right. I think they're beautiful.
Okay.
I love watching. Like, I'll tune in to like a Pebble Beach match, not even to see who's playing or watch the play, just to watch the scenery. So
it's like actually being outside.
Yeah, kind of, but you don't have to.
It's so nice.
But yes, pretty much a waste of space.
What do you think Rodney Dangerfield was like when he wasn't on cocaine?
Probably high on marijuana.
Right.
No, I mean, he's a pretty amped up guy. If anyone never needed cocaine, it was Rodney Dangerfield. But there's a lot of good stories about him just doing, like, his first casting meeting for this. Oh, yeah,
there's a great story in the book.
He shows up at the studio in like a stretch limousine in a powder blue leisure suit, and he just immediately pulls out a bag. He dumps a couple lines on the studio head's desk and does them, and then says something you can't say on the air.
Right.
But like,
we'll bleep you.
Yeah, it's just shocking that someone that high strung and nervous would want to take cocaine.
For what it's worth, that story is not actually in the book. That's actually what Chris did when he came on the show today. That was the first thing he did. Sure, Rodney Dangerfield did it. Is it okay that much as I love the guy, I think Bill Murray maybe hasn't made a good movie in like 15 years?
What is the one 15 years ago that you liked?
I think at that point you're looking at
like
maybe
The Life Aquatic with Steve
or
Zissou?
Broken Flowers. Broken Flowers is good. Jarmusch is good.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the way he decides on what to do is very sort of random. So I think there was a great story that he agreed to be in Garfield because he saw it was written by someone named Joel Cohen.
Right.
Who he thought was one of the Coen brothers, but it was a different Joel Cohen.
Yeah, right. I think that the thing I love about that story is I don't believe that story. I've heard that story too.
It's a good story.
It sounds true.
Yeah.
It sounds like something that Bill Murray would do.
Right.
But like, it's hard to imagine he's not actually heard the name Garfield. Like, do you think that Cohen, he thought like, oh, Joe Cohen's got a great story. It just happens to be, there's also a cat by that name.
Right.
But he's just working on that. But yeah, I think Broken Flowers is good. I wonder if like not winning the Oscar, like, because he really thought he was going to win the Oscar for Lost in Translation, seemed to be like not even necessarily ironically upset about it, because he did a lot of press, I think, that he wouldn't ordinarily do for that movie.
Yeah.
I think after that, he's like, forget it.
Well, I think he really wanted it.
Yeah.
And I think when he saw that he didn't get it, he was like, screw this.
And even that FDR movie was not so hot.
No,
that was not so hot.
Yeah.
Okay, how many ethnic slurs did Chevy Chase use throughout your interviews that you did with him?
Oh, not as many as I was hoping for, frankly.
but
they weren't
not as many.
There weren't ethnic slurs more than just talking trash about people who were perfectly nice. Chevy, especially at the time they made Caddyshack, was a really prickly dude.
Right.
And he was, pretty high on his own success, which was stratospheric at the time. And I don't think he's ever really come to grips with the fact that he's no longer at that level of fame. So
Donald Glover had a great thing in his New Yorker profile about that, about how he was very mean to Donald Glover on the community, and a lot of it was because he felt like he just not realized that you're not that Chevy Chase anymore.
Yeah, you're not the top dog anymore,
or even particularly close to it.
Yeah. He did not use any ethnic slurs, but he's a prickly guy.
Yeah. He used ethnic slurs. Okay, which is going to get sold first, Entertainment Weekly or Sports Illustrated? Which is going to get sold?
Well, I would think Sports Illustrated because it's on the block, isn't it? It's.
I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying that. Whoever you are watching this out there, you look very handsome. Entertainment Weekly guy doesn't think you're as handsome as I do. What percentage of your soul do you feel like you've lost out on this book tour promoting this book?
Oh, you know what? Maybe 2%.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah, no, it's very low because I'm talking about Caddyshack.
Right.
Had I written a book about a movie that I didn't particularly care for, then I feel like.
But
I
you
would've-
still have to like. I've promoted books before, and there's still
Yeah.
that little thing where it's just like, ugh, everyone's so tired of me talking about this. And I
sure.
love the book, and
For
I
sure.
love, but like so, but I can just dip in every once in a while and be like, yeah, Chris is talking about the book. It's a good book. I like having him talk about the book.
Yeah.
But if I were having to do it all the time, I feel like I might get sick of it.
You do find yourself repeating a lot of the same anecdotes, and that sort of brings on a level of self-loathing that it's hard to ignore.
Well, then I'm glad that you saved all of the best
Fresh
stuff for
stuff.
the first time on the Will Leitch Show. Okay, we got a game. It's called 10-second movie reviews. Basically, it's not so much a game as much as just see how fast we can talk. I'm going to give you a movie. You have 10 seconds to give me a review of it, and then I have 3 seconds to offer a retort.
What if I haven't seen the movie?
You've
Fake
seen
it.
You've seen these.
Okay.
movies. You've
All
seen
right, go ahead.
these. Okay, number 1, Happy Gilmore.
Terrible, terrible movie made by an actor who can't act. Adam Sandler is not my cup of tea.
All right, I am actually pro Happy Gilmore and anti everything else in that period. Billy Madison hurts my soul. Infinity War, Avengers Infinity War.
Oh, so many cast members. It's actually well made. I don't care about
Time.
Infinity Stones.
Fortunately, the next movie will be half as long. The Shape of Water,
Delightful.
delightful.
That's it.
My 3rd favorite movie about fish humping.
What are the other 2?
They're home movies. They're private things. They're closed circuit, straight to video. Here's my phone. It's really awesome, actually. We'll get it later. It's fine. Block that. Solo.
Solo. Good, not great. Not buying Alden Ehrenreich as Harrison Ford.
See, I think he's fine. He's fine. He's not the problem.
Lando
fine.
steals it.
Lando, Donald Glover is really charismatic and he's really, really fun. Ultimately it's like, okay, once you realize he's doing ability impression, there's not much else to it. Anyway, boat trip.
Boat trip with Cuba Gooding Jr.?
What other boat trip would I possibly be referring to?
All right. All I will say is that it's no chill factor.
I will note 3 seconds that one of the things you do when you watch old movies, you have to be careful not to be problematic cop. Let's not forget, this is a movie about the 2 dudes that want to go on a boat and meet ladies, but it's all guys. Yeah. That was like in the last 10 years, 15 years. Not that long ago. Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom.
Oh, I had a really good time. I liked
really good
it.
time.
I did. Other critics not loving it. I really dug it.
I have not seen it. I thought the first one was terrible, so we'll see what happens with this one. And the last one, First Reformed.
Oh, not a date movie.
Not a date movie.
It's bleak. It's depressing. But Paul Schrader's best movie in a while.
There are no fish sex scenes in the movie, so it sucks. Okay, now we have a game. We're gonna close up with the last that we played with a game called Outburst. Outburst. The game where there's Family Feud played quickly. I give you a category. We call it How Fast Can You Say Things on This Show that you're on with Will right now.
Okay.
But it's really Outburst. You've got 30 seconds. 30 seconds on the clock. 30 seconds on the clock.
Yep.
Ding. 30 seconds on the clock, and I'll give you a category, and you can give me for example, if I said books of the Bible.
Okay.
The name
as many as I can?
As many as you can in that 30 seconds. I've given you 10. There's only 10 here. But there's no wrong answers. I mean, there are wrong answers.
Right.
But you're not penalized for them.
Okay.
So just shoot them out as much as you can. Here we go.
I hope one of them isn't books of the Bible.
Give me the 10 highest grossing golf movies. 10 highest grossing, real, not adjusted for inflation. Highest grossing golf movies, go.
Caddyshack.
Yes.
Tin Cup.
Yes.
Legend of Bagger Vance.
Yes.
Happy Gilmore.
Yes.
Ba-doop-ba-doop. I'm
I'm all right. Nobody worry about me. So I'm just singing songs.
Yeah. No, that's all I got.
I just like to sing songs. Okay, he's done. I'm just going to keep singing then. I was singing Kenny Loggins from Caddyshack 2, The Deuce.
Oh, Caddyshack 2 is in there?
2. Yeah, it's in there.
Wow.
There's only been like 10.
Right, there's a lot. You're right. Exactly.
The greatest game ever played. Who's Your Caddy? Which I think is that off the Rick Riley? Maybe it's off the Rick Riley thing.
Could be.
I don't know. 7 Days in Utopia. Bobby Jones' Stroke of Genius.
Right.
And Tommy's Honor. Tommy's Honor. So I'd like you to get back to work on books about each of those.
I will get right
I like
on
the
it.
idea that like your lesson from this was not to write books about classic comedies, just to focus specifically on books about golf, books about movies about golf. Our guest is Chris Nashawaty. The book, I don't have a copy of the book, but you go and get the book. The book is a book about Caddyshack. It's a wonderful, wonderful. I really am a huge fan of the book, and it's done very well for you. And I've been very excited. So as someone that's been a fan of yours for a long time, it's exciting to see the success. So congratulations, and thanks for coming on and promoting it with me.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
All right. Fun like a fox. All right. This has been the Will Leitch Show. Please come back to see more programs on sportsillustrated.com, SITV, and where all of your Will Leitches are sold. Bye.